I didn't yell. I didn't argue. I didn't even blink when they handed me the eviction notice and smugly told me to vacate their property. I simply walked back inside my family farmhouse, pulled out a weathered envelope from a locked tin box, and slid a copy of the 1919 Colorado River Basin Water Rights Grant onto the table. That was the first domino. The second? Watching 35 freshly built luxury mansions transform into lakeside real estate overnight, courtesy of one forgotten dam, gravity, and a little help from federal law. But we're not there yet. Let me back up. My name is Eli Barrett, 38 years old, environmental systems engineer, born and raised in Wren Valley, Texas. That's a patch of land tucked between the edge of the hill country and the last flat veins of cattle country before the concrete sprawl of suburban expansion. My grandfather, Earl Dusty Barrett, bought this land back in 1953. Nearly 63 acres of untouched rolling fields, fed by a seasonal creek, shielded by live oak and sycamore trees that have stood since the Civil War. To outsiders, it was just farmland. To us, it was heritage. In 1979, Dusty did something that made him a local legend. He built a gravity-fed earth dam on the North Ridge, not to make money, but to preserve the natural watershed and support irrigation for surrounding farms during dry years. And it worked. For over 4 decades, that dam helped neighboring properties thrive. Even when the rains disappeared for months, our creek would trickle, just enough to save livestock in fields. And every Thanksgiving, folks from as far as Bramble County would send pies and letters thanking Grandpa Dusty for saving another season. I inherited that land in 2019 after he passed. By then, I was neck-deep in federal infrastructure work. I'd spent the last 11 years working on water conservation projects across Arizona, Afghanistan, and West Africa. Hydrology was my life. But I never forgot where I came from. I promised myself I'd return home after retirement, rebuild the farmhouse, reinstate the old rain collection system, and finish what Grandpa started, turning the land into a model for sustainable rural living. Except, I didn't retire. Not by choice. In 2022, during a flash flood mitigation mission in southern Utah, I got caught between 2 collapsing rock faces and fractured my spine in 3 places. My legs were fine, but my fieldwork days were done. I came home to Wren Valley with a cane, a half-packed duffel, and a burning need to reconnect with my roots. I wish this story was about that. But it isn't. It's about war. Only instead of bullets and sand, it was subpoenas and concrete mixers. And it all started with a stranger in a silk blouse and pearls, knocking on my porch at 6:32 a.m. on a Monday. The woman introduced herself as Madison Keys, president of the Maplestone Bluffs Homeowners Association. I remember thinking, funny name. We don't have any bluffs around here. Just hills. She held a manila envelope with a gold foil HOA seal. Her perfume smelled like honeysuckle and malice. Mr. Barrett, I'm afraid you've been occupying land that's now under Maplestone jurisdiction, she said sweetly, handing me the envelope like it was a wedding invitation. We've sent multiple notifications, but your sister in Dallas appears to have signed the land over to the county as unclaimed. I opened the packet. Inside, a cease and desist, a zoning map with red lines cutting through my back 40, and a copy of a land use proposal I'd never seen. I think there's been a mistake, I said, swallowing hard. Her smile was surgical. We don't make mistakes, Mr. Barrett. We break ground. And just like that, I heard the distant hum of machinery. When I stepped outside, for bulldozers were already clearing mesquite trees on the ridge. And behind them, rising like termites from the soil, were the steel skeletons of multi-million-dollar mansions. My land. Gone. What Madison didn't know was that I'd spent 11 years building roads in tribal Afghanistan without maps. I knew how to read terrain, understand bureaucracy, and most of all, I knew how to wait. So I waited. I called the county clerk's office. Sure enough, my sister had hired a legal service 2 years prior to manage the property taxes after my injury. They'd gone digital and stopped mailing notices. But somehow, the automated system didn't apply to inherited water rights land, and it was marked as dormant. That's when Madison struck. She'd petitioned the local planning board to rezone my rear 40 acres under urban luxury development, citing community benefit and tax enhancement. The board approved it in under 72 hours. That's the problem with sleepy towns. One slick HOA and a city councilman husband can turn farms into foundations overnight. What Madison also didn't know: that pretty little creek running dry in summer was fed by a dam designed for controlled flooding. And that dam still had power. Legal power. I went straight to my shed. Dug out the original topography charts Grandpa Dusty had drawn in '79, meticulously inked by hand, with creek gradients, soil types, and storm overflow paths. Then I opened the black binder labeled Federal Corps of Engineers, Wren Dam. Inside was the smoking gun, a signed agreement stating that the dam served regional flood prevention and agricultural flow purposes under joint jurisdiction between the USDA and the Department of the Interior. That meant no HOA, no city council, no mansion builder had any right to alter, reroute, or obstruct the natural flow of water. And those new luxury homes? They were built downstream. I didn't sleep that night. I sat on the porch watching the glow of work lights flicker across the horizon, their machines rumbling through my soil like termites through timber. At 2:12 a.m., I spotted something that made my jaw lock. Crews were laying new concrete culverts, diverting the creek. They were trying to starve the dam. That's when I called my old friend Casey Monroe, now a lead environmental compliance officer for the Texas Division of Water Resources. He picked up on the third ring. "Eli? Damn, haven't heard from you since Kandahar. What's going on?" "Someone's building downstream of Wren Dam," I said, "and they're diverting water illegally." There was a long pause. Then the rustle of papers. "Did you say downstream? Like, below the spill channel?" "Yeah. 35 luxury homes. Framing's already up." "Jesus. That's a disaster waiting to happen." I didn't say anything. He did. "Let me guess, they don't know what's coming." I hung up, pulled on my boots, and hiked the ridge. The dam stood quiet in the moonlight, like a soldier waiting for orders. The next morning, Madison returned. This time, she brought company. A tall man in a slim tan suit and polished boots stepped out of the SUV and introduced himself as Clay Donovan, city council member, real estate investor, and Madison's husband. "I hear there's been some confusion about the boundary lines," he said, not offering a hand. "Confusion's a funny word," I replied. "I call it theft." He smiled, not a flicker of concern in his eyes. "We're within our rights. That land's been vacant for 2 years, and you have no legal usage records since 2019. I took a deep breath. "You diverted a federally protected creek." He chuckled. "It's just water, Mr. Barrett." I pointed at the dam. "No, Mr. Donovan. That's pressure." He didn't get it. Yet. But he would. Soon. Later that evening, I stood at the edge of the dam spillway, holding a flashlight in one hand and the original 1919 water rights deed in the other. Below me, the lights of 35 identical mansions glowed in perfect rows, white siding, arched windows, pristine cul-de-sacs. All built downstream. All sitting on illegally rezoned land. All about to learn what gravity, and a little legal pressure, can do. Because Madison took my land. But she forgot what came with it. The water. The law. And a legacy that doesn't wash away easily. If you want to break someone's will, you don't need fists. You need paperwork. Madison Keys and Clay Donovan didn't expect me to fight back. Not really. They assumed I'd be just another small-town vet, injured, quiet, isolated, the perfect target for a hostile takeover. What they didn't realize: I spent 11 years in Army Engineering Command. I've been buried under federal paperwork deeper than any HOA regulation could ever hope to reach. And I don't lose sleep. I make others lose it. It started with zoning. Somewhere between my spinal injury and moving back to Wren Valley, my sister Paige had hired a property tax service out of Dallas to manage things while I recovered. They paid the taxes on time, but no one checked the zoning ledger. Big mistake. Turns out the Maplestone HOA had quietly lobbied for a zoning change 14 months earlier. Clay, as a city councilman, filed an emergency residential development priority claim, citing economic revitalization and affordable housing as justification. Funny. Nothing about those 4,000 square foot mansions looked affordable. But because my land was considered inactive, no objections were filed. No hearings. No notices sent. Just a paper trail buried under layers of procedural silence. Until I started digging. I pulled every document, tax rolls, water maps, city council meeting minutes. It didn't take long to find the pattern. The Maplestone HOA had absorbed 3 neighboring farms the same way. Petition for rezoning. Claim adverse possession. Begin construction before resistance forms. I wasn't their first victim. But I'd be the last. The sound of construction echoed across my land every day. Nail guns. Backhoes. Foundation drills. But I wasn't idle. I was documenting. I mounted trail cameras in the trees, took time-stamped water measurements at 3 key creek points, and compiled a daily log of machinery interfering with natural flow. Then I noticed something else. The water level in Barrett Dam was dropping, fast. I hiked upstream to the split channel and found the source. A makeshift bypass trench had been dug, directing runoff away from the creek bed and into a culvert. They were bleeding the dam dry. Illegally. Without permits. Without environmental review. Without a clue. That's when I called the Texas Environmental Quality Division. And that's when Madison's panic began. 2 days later, a drone flew over my property. Then another. Then I found a motion trigger camera nailed to a fence post just 50 feet from my front porch. The next morning, someone left a printed flyer under my windshield. Unstable veteran refuses to cooperate with community development. Children at risk. It was the same playbook they'd used on the neighboring farm owners. Smear their reputation. Paint them as dangerous. Force them to sell cheap. But what they didn't realize: I don't scare. I record. And I had enough video to show a coordinated harassment campaign. I uploaded a 7-minute clip of Madison berating me in front of my own barn. No yelling, just her calm venom. Think about your legacy, Eli. This place is wasted on someone with 1 foot in the past. Within 48 hours, the video had 76,000 views. And I started getting emails. From neighbors. From veterans. From engineers. From lawyers. People who'd been through the same thing, or wanted to help me win. One email stood out. Amanda Reyes, water rights attorney. Mr. Barrett, she wrote. I believe your dam qualifies for federal agricultural water protection. I'd like to represent you pro bono. I called her that night. She answered before the first ring finished. Amanda was sharp. Graduated top of her class at UT Austin. Spent 5 years defending rural landowners from eminent domain seizures. After reviewing my dam permits, she said 6 words I'll never forget. They're standing on a felony, Eli. What do you mean? I asked. Those mansions were built in a federally designated seasonal flood zone. They diverted a waterway without clearance, and they're using it to artificially inflate property value. That's environmental fraud and Clean Water Act violation, minimum $50,000 fine per day, per property. I sat there, stunned. That was over $1.75 million per day. Amanda wasn't done. Also, she added, did you know your dam's 1979 build included a clause for seasonal agricultural water redistribution? She emailed it to me. Dam operators shall ensure downstream water flow continuity for regional farming communities during times of drought or flood as defined by seasonal averages. Amanda chuckled. If they've blocked the creek and you haven't opened the spillway, you could be in breach. You're saying I have a legal obligation to release water? Exactly. And a federal right to do it. I looked at the dam that night with new eyes. It wasn't just a reservoir. It was a time bomb. With me holding the trigger. The next day, I got a letter taped to my gate. Notice of code violation. Illegal agricultural equipment. Improper fencing. Unregistered livestock structure. Noise complaint, tractor engine. Every box was a lie. I took photos. Called Amanda. This is called soft eviction, she explained. They're going to hit you with every code violation they can to bankrupt you. They weren't wrong. In a week, I got a fine for a barn built in 1973. A wellness check from Veteran Services. A suspicious individual police report. Each time, I documented everything. Each time, I grew quieter. Because what Madison didn't know. I wasn't planning a lawsuit. I was planning a flood. And every insult, every violation, every arrogant assumption, was just more pressure behind the dam. Amanda called on a Friday afternoon with a fire in her voice. We pulled Madison's HOA formation papers. Guess what? What? They never filed a mandatory creek diversion impact report. That means every home back there was built on the assumption that no natural water would ever return. And if it does, their insurance is invalid. The bank's development loan becomes toxic. And every homeowner can sue the HOA board for fraud. I let that sink in. Eli, Amanda said, they didn't just build on your land, they built on a lie. And you've got the water to prove it. That evening, it rained. Just enough to coat the hilltops and tickle the edge of the spillway. I watched the clouds roll in from the west like cavalry. In the valley below, the lights inside the 35 identical mansions flickered on one by one. Lawns perfectly manicured. Driveways fresh. Swimming pools still half-filled. All sitting quietly. All unaware. All downstream. I pulled open Grandpa Dusty's journal. The final entry read, if someone ever forgets what this land is for, let the water remind them. I closed the book and walked toward the dam gatehouse. Water doesn't argue. It doesn't negotiate. It simply follows the path of least resistance. But I wasn't water. I was engineering. And I was about to design a path no one saw coming. Most people think old equipment is useless. But not everything built to last needs electricity or Wi-Fi. Pop's Dam was a marvel of simplicity, an earth core gravity structure with a primary spillway, a manual gate valve, and a stone diversion channel built into the hillside. I spent 2 days inspecting every inch of the mechanism. The hinges were rusted, but not seized. The gate arm moved with some force, but nothing a torque wrench couldn't solve. The real treasure? A bypass pressure gauge system, analog, hydraulic, and beautifully intact. At 5:43 a.m. on a fog-soaked Wednesday, I opened the dam's lower maintenance shed and saw it. A steel wheel the size of a tractor tire, labeled, spillway, primary, flow modulation. I turned it an eighth of a circle and listened as ancient pipes groaned and shifted. Below me, the water began to stir. But I didn't release anything. Not yet. This was reconnaissance. Amanda's assistant, Toby, sent me drone images taken from above the development. Look at the lot angles, he said. You see that? Each mansion was placed in perfect rows, but they followed the shape of the old creek. Why? Because the developer had cut corners. Instead of elevating the land properly, they just leveled it. Which meant the foundations were flat. The drainage was shallow. And worst of all, 3 of the lower units had basements below the historical waterline. They built underground in a seasonal floodplain, Amanda said. One good rain and they're swimming, I finished. What she said next chilled me. They can't admit that publicly. If they do, the HOA's development loan defaults immediately. That's when I realized. They'd keep pushing, not because they believed they were right, but because admitting they were wrong would bankrupt them. I filed 5 reports that week. Unauthorized creek rerouting. Violation of Texas Floodplain Development Code. Unpermitted stormwater infrastructure. Non-compliant hydrology assessments. Failure to notify adjacent landowners of construction. Each report triggered a clock. Casey from the Texas Water Office told me. Every agency you file with has 21 days to respond or escalate. That's state law. Meanwhile, Amanda compiled a brief for the EPA and Department of the Interior, citing a potential Clean Water Act breach based on improper fill material in a federal watershed. And Toby? He cross-referenced the construction company's filings and found something else. The HOA had applied for luxury residential community status to gain special tax breaks. But that status required guaranteed uninterrupted access to municipal water. And the water lines? They were tied into the diverted creek system. I didn't just own the creek. I owned their plumbing. Madison held a press conference. Under a canvas tent, flanked by new residents and a local TV crew, she delivered her speech. Wren Valley is being held hostage by a radical individual who refuses to cooperate with community development. His behavior has endangered families, homes, and the peaceful progress of our neighborhood. She didn't say my name. She didn't need to. Then she walked the cameras to the edge of the dam, framed perfectly to show the looming reservoir behind her, and pointed with dramatic flair. This outdated structure poses a threat to every child living below it. And we demand the city intervene. Her voice trembled like a soap opera villain. Fake tears. Real desperation. But I was watching from the ridge. And so was Amanda. Perfect, she whispered. She just turned it into a public safety case. That means federal jurisdiction. And if your dam passes inspection, I can open the gates, I said. Storm clouds started gathering. Casey texted me the forecast. 3.2 inches of rainfall expected over 48 hours, more than enough to push the dam to operational threshold. Amanda's plan was precise. File a motion for emergency water release based on seasonal averages. Notify all agencies of potential downstream ecological restoration effort. Document everything, from rainfall to pressure readings. We had 7 days. That's when the threats escalated. A local sheriff deputy arrived at my gate with a handwritten note signed by a local judge. Temporary restraining order. Eli Barrett is prohibited from altering, releasing, or manipulating any flood control structure until a formal hearing. Amanda reviewed the document. This is illegal, she said. No hearing, no judicial signature, no emergency declaration. It's a stunt. Still, if I disobey, they'll arrest you, she said grimly. But not if we get federal inspectors here first. That's when I made the decision. I needed allies. I reached out to everyone I'd grown up with. The Hargrove family, whose cattle used to drink from our creek. Miss Eleanor from the general store. Pastor Bill, whose church once helped fund the dam's repairs. They came. We stood on the dam ridge while I explained everything, the rezoning, the construction, the diverted creek, the fraud, the fake restraining order. And I ended with this. I'm not asking you to help me flood a neighborhood. I'm asking you to help me restore a creek. Our creek. One by one, they nodded. And stayed. 2 days later, I stood at the podium during a city planning meeting. Madison was there, front row, flanked by Clay and 2 men in suits who looked like they'd never walked through mud. I pulled out 3 things. The 1919 water rights grant. The 1979 dam permit with flood management clause. A current map showing the diverted creek. Then I played drone footage of the spillway and the illegal culverts rerouting the water. The room went dead silent. I looked Madison in the eye. You built 35 mansions on land that was never yours. You rerouted water you didn't own. And now you want to arrest the person who warned you before nature did. The city council chair cleared his throat. We'll need to investigate these claims. Clay stood, red-faced. This is grandstanding. That man is a threat to public. He's a threat to your wallet, I interrupted. The crowd murmured. Amanda filed the formal complaint that same evening. And I walked back to the dam in the rain. Behind me, the thunder cracked. In front of me, 3.1 million gallons waited. Rain doesn't knock. It taps lightly at first. Then slaps you in the face when you don't listen. And that week, no one was listening. Especially not Madison Keys. The first storm hit Thursday night. Slow, gentle sheets at first, then bursts. Each gust swelling Barrett Dam's reservoir another half-inch. By Friday morning, my pressure gauges were twitching. The inflow was 5 times the average. But the HOA still hadn't stopped construction. In fact, they were accelerating. New sidewalks, imported pine fencing, even underground sprinkler lines. All of it being installed along the original floodplain. Amanda and I stood by the shed, our jackets soaked through, watching it all through binoculars. They really don't believe this dam works, she said. I nodded. Good. That means they won't see it coming. At 6:18 a.m. Saturday, I was jolted awake by flashing blue lights and heavy knocks. 2 officers stood on my porch holding a temporary injunction. I was being investigated for attempted criminal flooding and endangering public infrastructure. The source of the complaint? You guessed it, the Maplestone HOA. Amanda arrived 20 minutes later in full legal armor, black trench coat, coffee in one hand, file folder in the other. This is theater, she growled, brushing past the deputies. They're stalling the inspection team. We knew what was happening. Madison had leveraged her political reach to fast-track a restraining order with Judge Harlan, an old friend of Clay Donovan's. This buys them 72 hours, Amanda said. But that's all. Federal jurisdiction supersedes. I already filed the override. And while they were playing politics, the rain kept falling. Later that day, I hiked up to the far side of the dam's spillway control trench. I noticed something strange. A pile of wet concrete mix, dumped right into the runoff groove. Somebody had tried to jam the channel. Sabotage. And they hadn't even done it well, quickset poured in clumps, no reinforcement, just desperation. I pulled out my phone and hit record. Captured everything. Marked the GPS location. Amanda sent it to the EPA's Regional Enforcement Office. Their reply. Document everything. We're moving our visit up by 48 hours. That evening, Casey from the Texas Water Office emailed me a scanned document. An engineering survey buried in city archives. It showed that 5 of the 35 mansions sat exactly within the historical flood channel. A natural stream that once carried runoff across the low basin after dam overflow. And those 5 homes had basements. With no sub-pump systems. And no flood vents. They cut corners, Casey said. If the dam releases even 30%, those homes will flood, no question. Amanda leaned back and smiled. And that's not your fault. It's theirs. They built illegally. You didn't touch a thing, yet. Sunday morning, the HOA counterattacked. A social media post went viral. Image, Madison holding a toddler on her porch, pointing toward the dam. Caption, my son plays in this yard. Why won't the city stop him? Within hours, #DamDanger and #ProtectOurKids were trending locally. The comments were brutal. Someone arrest this psycho. This is why unstable veterans need monitoring. He's gonna drown our neighborhood. Amanda and I knew the PR war had begun. So we countered. I released a 3-minute documentary clip. Time-lapse of water levels rising. Footage of diverted creek beds. The original 1919 water rights deed. Statements from neighbors saying I had protected the land. And it ended with me standing in front of the dam. I didn't build downstream. They did. And now nature's reminding them who's in charge. The video hit 100K views in 48 hours. And suddenly, the narrative shifted. On Monday night, the storm truly arrived. Winds howled. Lightning carved the hilltops. The dam swelled. By 3 a.m., I had to check the gauges. With a lantern in one hand and Amanda's walkie-talkie in the other, I climbed to the ridge. The pressure valve was groaning. The gauge needle had entered the red zone. It was time. But legally, I couldn't open the gates without inspectors. I stood there as the rain pelted my jacket and the trees swayed like drunks at last call. If this kept up for 12 more hours, the water would crest. And then, no one would control the release. At 8:04 a.m. Tuesday, 2 black SUVs pulled up. Out stepped 3 agents from the Environmental Protection Agency, a hydrologist from the Department of the Interior, and a field investigator from the Texas Parks and Wildlife. They wore rain jackets and clipboards. And their faces were already angry. The lead EPA agent walked up to me, ignoring the drizzle. "Mr. Barrett?" "Yes, sir." "We saw the sabotage footage. We saw the diverted creek. And we saw the plans for basements below the waterline." He glanced toward the dam. "How soon can you demonstrate operational flow?" I walked toward the gatehouse without a word. And for the first time in months, I smiled. Water doesn't obey paperwork. It doesn't care about zoning codes, political influence, or luxury hardwood floors. Water just follows gravity. And that morning, gravity had waited long enough. At 6:51 a.m., with heavy mist crawling low over the valley, I stood at the dam's control wheel with 5 federal agents behind me. Amanda stood off to the side, clipboard in hand, boots muddy and coat dripping. Per Section 42 of the Agricultural Water Management Covenant, she read aloud, "The dam operator is authorized and obligated to ensure seasonal flow restoration when ecological or agricultural continuity is compromised." The lead EPA agent, Sarah Kim, nodded. "You're within your legal rights, Mr. Barrett. Go ahead." I wrapped both hands around the steel wheel. The metal was cold. Greasy. Familiar. 1 turn. Then 2. Then 3 full revolutions. The gears groaned, then caught. And then, the sound. It wasn't violent. It wasn't cinematic. It was beautiful. A hollow clunk echoed through the earth like a giant exhale, followed by the gentle whoosh of 3.1 million gallons of stored rainwater beginning its descent. The spillway, dry for years, hummed back to life. At first, the release looked harmless, a shimmering ribbon sliding across old concrete. But within 10 minutes, the flow had doubled. And down in the valley, water returned to its natural bed. It rushed past abandoned creek stones, wrapped around old cedar roots, and charged through the heart of the Maplestone development. EPA agent Kim took out a laser rangefinder and pointed it toward the water. Flow rate, 27 cubic feet per second. Stable. Consistent with historical wet season runoff. Toby, Amanda's assistant, streamed it all live. Within the first hour, the footage reached 50,000 viewers. By lunch, it passed 200,000. We weren't flooding a neighborhood. We were documenting a natural event, legally protected, federally validated, and publicly visible. But just as water reached the first property lines, Madison appeared. She stormed up the gravel road in white heels and a trench coat, a Channel 9 news crew following 5 paces behind her. "There he is," she shouted, mascara streaking, face red with fury. "He's flooding our homes. This is terrorism." Agent Kim calmly stepped forward. "Ma'am, you are standing on federally misappropriated watershed. The water is flowing through its historical channel. Mr. Barrett is operating under legal obligation. Madison pointed at the homes below. "Children live there." Amanda replied, "Then perhaps you shouldn't have built luxury basements on floodplain land without disclosing it to the buyers." The news crew kept rolling. Even they weren't sure what narrative they were filming anymore. Within 30 minutes, the first basement window cracked. It wasn't catastrophic, just enough to leak muddy runoff into freshly laid tile floors. By the hour mark, sump pumps were overwhelmed. Water pooled in driveways, lapped at sliding doors, and filled the decorative Pebble Creek Madison had installed with actual, flowing water. The homeowners emerged, confused, cell phones in hand, shoes soaked, HOA reps nowhere in sight. And in that moment, it clicked for them. Their HOA hadn't warned them. Their builder hadn't protected them. And the man they'd been told was a threat, was simply releasing water into a channel that had existed for 70 years. Meanwhile, Amanda was 3 steps ahead. At 10:34 a.m., she received confirmation from the Office of Environmental Oversight. Maplestone HOA's construction permits were missing 5 key documents. No Army Corps clearance for creek diversion. No floodplain deviation plan. No homeowner disclosure regarding natural water channels. No municipal hydrological study. No emergency drainage permits. Each missing paper was a $25,000 per day violation. Multiplied across 35 homes and 18 months of development. Over $14 million in liability. Amanda looked at Madison and calmly said, "Your mansions are uninsured. And your board's going to prison." By midday, Clay Donovan held his own press conference. He stood behind a podium in front of a flooded cul-de-sac, shouting at reporters, "This is ecological sabotage. Mr. Barrett should be arrested." Unfortunately for him, Agent Kim took the mic after. "The water flowing behind us is consistent with historical, legally protected stream paths. The real question is how these homes received permits in the first place." Then she held up a laminated copy of the 1919 water rights deed. And the internet exploded. The HOA wasn't the victim. They were the invader. And they'd just been legally and literally washed out. What Madison hadn't expected. The community fought back. By 2 p.m., dozens of locals had joined Amanda and me at the dam overlook. Families, farmers, veterans, reporters, and college students waving homemade signs. Water belongs to the land. Protect legacy, not luxury. Let the creek run free. And then, the moment that tipped the scales forever. Mrs. Chen, an 82-year-old neighbor whose family had farmed downstream since the 1950s, stood on live camera holding an old black and white photo. "This was my grandfather," she said. "He used this creek to grow tomatoes that fed this whole town. That water saved lives. It belongs here." Silence. Then cheering. And the camera kept rolling. At sunset, the final rays of orange light hit the water's surface. The stream now ran strong and full through the Maplestone development, not damaging homes, but proving a point. Nature had reclaimed her path. And the world had seen it happen. Amanda stood beside me on the dam wall. Her voice low. "You know what this is now?" "What?" "A case study." And she was right. Because the next step wasn't just about fixing what Madison broke. It was about exposing the entire system that let her do it. Water forced them to listen. But paper would make them pay. The Maplestone HOA thought they were untouchable. They thought that land meant power. They forgot one thing: real power flows from proof. And I had it, in print, on video, and under oath. Monday morning, the air smelled different. Not of rain or wet soil, but ink and inkjet toner. Amanda, flanked by 2 paralegals, rolled into the Wren County Courthouse with 4 bulging crates of evidence. Each one was labeled. Package Box A, water rights. Package Box B, permit violations. Package Box C, HOA harassment. Package Box D, developer fraud. At 8:12 a.m., she filed a comprehensive lawsuit in federal court. Charges included environmental tampering, misuse of zoning authority, criminal negligence, unlawful diversion of protected waterways, civil harassment, conspiracy to commit fraud. On top of that, the EPA filed parallel federal complaints, and the Texas Office of Environmental Oversight opened a criminal inquiry into Clay Donovan's construction deals. By noon, local reporters flooded the courthouse steps. Amanda held a press conference right there. This isn't just about land. This is about accountability. You cannot bulldoze history for profit and expect to walk away dry. 2 days later, the Donovans' world cracked. First, a federal judge issued an emergency injunction freezing all HOA accounts pending investigation. Then, the development loan funding Maplestone's Phase 2 was revoked by the bank due to material misrepresentation of risk. Clay's construction company, Donovan Property Holdings, missed payroll. Contractors walked off-site. Lawsuits from homeowners began pouring in. Because now they knew. They'd bought homes built illegally on a floodplain. Their insurance policies were invalid. Their resale values had plummeted by nearly 60% overnight. One family even found standing water beneath their children's nursery. Another discovered a mold bloom crawling up their drywall. You build on a lie, you live and rot. Amanda had a brilliant strategy. Don't just attack the board. Empower the residents. We hand-delivered packets to every mansion in the development. A copy of the original 1919 water rights grant. The federal code confirming stream restoration immunity. The legal history of the Maplestone HOA formation. And a step-by-step guide, how to sue your HOA board for fraud. By Friday, 22 of the 35 homeowners had filed class action complaints. Even more powerful, they held their own community vote. On live stream, under gray skies and dripping eaves, the residents of Maplestone voted 29-6 to formally dissolve the HOA board pending investigation. Madison watched it happen. Silent. Soaked. Erased. Then something unexpected happened. Amanda received an anonymous manila envelope on her windshield. No return address. Inside, a thumb drive, 3 building inspection reports, and 1 signed confession from a former Maplestone contractor. The drive contained drone footage, taken months before any homes were finished, showing Clay's crew bulldozing live creeks at night, dumping filled dirt, and burying the water line under fake landscaping. Worse, they staged their flood control inspections. The reports showed that the city inspector had never even visited the site. He'd signed off from his office in Austin. All rubber-stamped by a friend on the council, one Clay had appointed during a re-election campaign. Amanda smiled when she saw it. This isn't just negligence, she said. This is organized crime. For the first time since this all began, I didn't feel like a man against the world. Now it was the world versus Madison and Clay. Journalists from Houston, Dallas, and even out-of-state news outlets began circling the story. The headline practically wrote itself. Veteran landowner uses century-old water rights to expose HOA fraud scheme. Online forums exploded. Reddit threads went viral. YouTubers dissected the case like a true crime docuseries. I wasn't the villain. I was the damn defender. The narrative had flipped. And so had the pressure. In early September, federal prosecutors confirmed a grand jury had been assembled to review criminal charges. Clay faced possible indictments for wire fraud, perjury, bribery, environmental violations, abuse of public office. Madison, charged with HOA fraud, civil harassment, false public endangerment claims, conspiracy. Their attorneys tried to paint them as misled developers just trying to create community. But it didn't work. Too many receipts. Too many ruined lives. Too much water already spilled. 1 week before their scheduled court date, Madison's team made a desperate move. They offered me a private settlement. $3.5 million. In exchange for silence. Dropping all claims. Signing a non-disclosure agreement. Amanda didn't even let me finish reading it. Burn it, she said. We're not settling. We're setting precedent. I agreed. Because this was no longer about my land. It was about every farmer, rancher, and family who ever got steamrolled by a fake neighborhood wrapped in white fences and fake smiles. On the final day of Section 6, something beautiful happened. The Wren Valley Planning Board held a vote on whether to designate the original creek and dam system as a protected regional watershed. The vote passed. Unanimously. Signs went up across the development. You are entering Barrett Watershed Reserve, EST 1919. A new walking trail was planned. The creek was made permanent. And no one, no HOA, could ever touch it again. Amanda and I stood at the ridge as workers planted native grasses along the stream bank. Below, the water moved freely, clear, steady, proud. It's over, she said. I shook my head. No. This is where it begins. Because in Section 7, we go to court. And for the first time, Madison has to sit and listen. They spent months building walls, legal walls, political walls, concrete ones. But now they were surrounded by something they couldn't hold back. Truth. The courthouse was packed. Rows of media, HOA residents, locals, and legal observers filled every bench. I sat near the front, between Amanda and Mrs. Chen. She held a small photo of her grandfather beside the creek. I held Grandpa Dusty's original dam permit, still in its tin envelope. Madison entered wearing black and pearls, like she was attending a funeral. Clay followed 2 steps behind, jaw clenched like a man walking into an ambush. He was. The bailiff announced the case. State of Texas versus Clay Donovan and Madison Keys. Docket hashtag 23145E, fraud, environmental misconduct, bribery, and harassment. Judge Morales presided, a no-nonsense woman with a reputation for dismantling corruption with surgical precision. She gave each side strict instructions. No grandstanding. No emotional plays. Just facts. And we had all the facts. Amanda's voice was calm but sharp enough to slice drywall. Your Honor, this is not about a neighborhood. This is about deception. The defendants used fraud to rezone protected land, silenced a disabled veteran, and endangered 35 families. She paused. Then held up 2 maps. One from 1919, clearly showing the original creek. One from 2023, with luxury mansions built directly on top of it. And when the water returned, as it always does, those families suffered. And the defendants blamed the landowner who warned them first. Madison's lawyer objected. Sensationalism. Judge Morales didn't blink. Overruled. Continue. Amanda turned and locked eyes with Madison. Let's talk about what happens when you try to dam up the truth. Our first witness, EPA agent Sarah Kim. She explained, in crisp detail, how the dam had operated flawlessly for decades. Then, she showed drone footage of the unauthorized culverts, concrete block spillways, and fake landscaping Madison's team used to redirect the water. The jury gasped when the footage played, especially the night scenes of workers burying creek stones under sod. Kim's conclusion. This wasn't accidental. It was a calculated effort to erase the waterway and increase property value. Next came the homeowners. Mrs. Reyes, who discovered mold under her nursery floor. The Holtz, whose basement flooded the day the dam released. A single mom named Tanya, whose home insurance denied her claim because the risk was not disclosed during purchase. Each testified that Madison had promised a modern utopia and no natural water sources. Each received pamphlets from the HOA showing fake blueprints, with no mention of flood history. Then Amanda brought out the bombshell. A sales training video from Donovan Property Holdings. In it, a team leader says, "Don't mention the creek. We're rebranding the area as high ground, and no one wants to hear about flood risk. The courtroom went silent. Even the judge's pen froze mid-note. Next came Toby, our research warrior. He laid out a timeline. April 2022, Clay files rezoning request under urgent housing relief. May 2022, Madison signs HOA charter claiming no existing environmental structures. June 2022, construction begins without permits from the Corps of Engineers. July 2022, water diversion trench illegally dug overnight. August 2022, first basements poured below the protected waterline. Toby handed over 300 pages of emails, invoices, and city planning documents. Each one stamped. Each one real. And then he showed the final nail. An internal email from Clay to Madison. If the damn owner fights this, we'll smear him out. He's got no political capital. Just squeeze him hard and push it through. Madison's attorney tried to claw back control. On cross-examination, he implied that I had orchestrated a vendetta. Isn't it true, Mr. Barrett, that you planned to flood the development from the beginning? I paused. Reached into my jacket. Pulled out the original spillway logbook. Held it up. This dam operated at standard capacity from 1979 to today. The release you're referring to was triggered by natural rainfall, under legal supervision, at the request of the EPA. The jury scribbled notes. Even Judge Morales leaned forward. Amanda added. And if my client wanted revenge, why did he call for state inspection 6 weeks before the release? Silence. After 3 full days of testimony, evidence, and public outrage, the case entered closing arguments. Madison's attorney begged for leniency. She was misled. She didn't understand the consequences. Amanda? She didn't flinch. She understood exactly what she was doing. She stole land. She silenced neighbors. She endangered families. And when the water returned, she cried foul. But the truth isn't flooding, Your Honor. It's restoration. The jury left for deliberation at 4:22 p.m. We waited. 1 hour. Then 2. At 6:37 p.m., the buzzer rang. The foreman stood. We, the jury, find the defendants guilty on all counts. Gasps. Cheers. A single clap from the back row, then an eruption. Judge Morales looked straight at Madison. You violated the law, the trust of this community, and the sanctity of the land itself. You will be sentenced accordingly. Clay's knees buckled. Madison stared at the floor. As they were led away, Amanda turned to me. Justice doesn't undo damage. But it stops it from spreading. I nodded, hand tightening around Grandpa Dusty's deed. Water doesn't forget. It finds the cracks. It returns. And when the ground clears, it nourishes what's left behind. The war was over. But the rebuild? That was just beginning. 1 month after the verdict, Judge Morales handed down final sentencing. Clay Donovan. 8 years federal prison for fraud, bribery, and environmental violations. $4.2 million restitution to homeowners. Permanent ban from holding any public office or development license in Texas. Madison Keys. 5 years suspended sentence. $1.1 million in fines. Banned from holding leadership in any HOA or housing entity nationwide. But more than that. They were erased. Maplestone HOA was dissolved. The board scattered. The luxury development lost its shine. And the residents? They were free. The city offered me a choice. Sue every homeowner individually. Or propose a restoration plan. I chose restoration. Amanda and I crafted a plan with local officials and conservationists. Phase 1. Convert the lowest 8 properties, the most damaged, into a public greenbelt. Phase 2. Use remaining insurance funds to retrofit 15 homes with water-resistant foundations. Phase 3. Create the Barrett Creek Heritage Park, a space honoring the original water rights history. It wasn't about revenge. It was about reclamation. And the people came to help. It started with volunteers. High school kids planting native trees. Veterans building benches. Artists painting murals of the original stream map on the backs of old HOA signs. The old neighbors who once feared me now brought casseroles and coffee. Mrs. Reyes brought her daughter to visit the new trail. She says the water sings now, she whispered. I nodded. It always did. People just weren't listening. In March, we held the grand opening of the Barrett Creek Reserve. Amanda spoke first. She shared the history. 1919 water grant. 1979 dam permit. 2023 legal victory. Then she invited me to cut the ribbon. I held Grandpa Dusty's tin envelope one last time. And opened it. Inside was a folded letter I had never seen. Addressed to the one who keeps it flowing. It read, if they ever forget, son. If they pave it over or call it progress. Just let the water speak. It always tells the truth. The dam still stands, stronger than ever. With federal protection, maintenance funding, and a plaque. Barrett Dam, EST 1979. Restored 2024. Legacy flows here. We added a solar-powered gauge so kids could watch the water levels change. The old spillway trail became a nature walk, complete with educational signs. The mansions that weren't torn down? They were bought, cheap, by artists, teachers, and non-profit housing groups. The false luxury was gone. Real community was moving in. One evening by the stream, Amanda told me she was leaving. Going home? I asked. She smiled. No, going west. Colorado. There's another case. Another creek someone's trying to bury. I didn't stop her. She was a flood in her own way, precise, unstoppable, righteous. Before she left, she handed me a folder. Inside, a notarized deed. You now own the full watershed, she said. The city gifted it to you. Unanimous vote. I didn't speak. I just stared at the land. Mine again. For good. A week after Amanda left, I got a letter. From prison. From Clay. It wasn't an apology. It was a warning. You won this round. But people like us don't stop. Another developer will come. Another HOA will smile pretty and start digging. He was right. They'd come again. But now? I was ready. And so was the water. I walk the creek every morning now. Same boots. Same cane. Different heart. Kids ride bikes down what used to be Maple Lane. Grandparents fish near the old footbridge. College students sketch the curve of the dam. And in the center of it all, a bronze statue of Grandpa Dusty, holding a shovel in one hand, pointing toward the valley with the other. Inscribed below it, don't fight the water. Follow it home. The story didn't end with the flood. It ended with a stream, steady, clear, and protected. Just like it was always meant to be. The dam didn't just hold water. It held truth. And when truth finally flowed, it washed everything false away.